Hey everyone, I'm going to put this quick training on for content that converts dedicated to solar contractors. So let's jump into it. I will share my screen. Awesome. Okay, so solar content that converts. What we're really looking at here is basically how to create content that takes a user from just a reader, a potential client, to someone that gets in touch with you, that converts with you through a contact form or getting on the phone, right? So what we're going to cover in this training is typically three things. So results, basically how we measure results with content. Rankings versus revenue here is basically what I'm going to touch on, and try and shift the focus away from rankings. I'll touch more on why in a bit. The 5 different types of content and why they each matter, and basically how to write content that converts. Basically, what I mean by converts is someone getting in touch with you through a contact form or getting on the phone with you so they can basically pay you for solar installations. So why trust me? I'm the owner of Easy Mode Media. I specialize in SEO only for solar contractors. I'm a qualified electrician for 2 years. I know the industry. And basically, this framework for content is a huge part of my strategy for clients that you can see generates real results for real contractors out there. So what's the goal of this training? I've analyzed hundreds, maybe thousands of solar contractor websites, and content is one of the most common problems and opportunities that contractors face. So the content on your website likely isn't working hard enough for you. So I'll kind of touch on what all that is and typically the low-hanging fruits for your website. So we're going to understand what kind of content to create and how to prioritize the 5 different types, because you don't want to be focusing on down the road if you haven't got your framework, your foundation in place. So identify what makes good content and how to generate trust with your content. So these 3 things are super important. They're basically critical. If you don't tick off like identify like good content, or you don't generate trust, people aren't going to get in touch with you, right? People aren't going to contact you, and they're going to contact the competitors, and you're just not going to have that lead. So let's jump right into it. Results versus rankings. Sorry, rankings versus revenues here. So how do you measure success of the content, right? What's a better measurement for how well content performs in Google search results or search results in general? Keyword rankings or the revenue these keywords and landing pages bring in for your business? Obviously, revenue, right? But we get hung up on rankings. You know, if you're ranking number 1, it doesn't typically bring in more revenue for your business. I'll touch on why that is. So here we can see some keywords. I'm using California up here as the example. So solar companies in California, solar in California, best solar companies in California. You can see that there's a lot of volume here, but these are very competitive keywords as well. So you're definitely right. We need to focus our SEO efforts around very targeted keywords, but we shouldn't stop there. It shouldn't be the end goal of ranking number 1, because it doesn't always generate in revenue, right? So here's 2 very common traps when it comes to keywords for the solar industry, right? You can see that we've got up the top here, average cost of solar PV in California, benefits of solar California. That's fantastic, but no one is searching for these keywords. No one cares enough. No one's typing in that exact term. So you should focus your content on other keywords, right? The other trap that I see a lot of contractors fall into is focusing on the wrong customer intent. So what's the intent of each blog post? So free solar in California, how to get free solar California, free solar panels in California. The word here, free, basically tells you that someone's not really looking to pay for solar. So it's what's called informational intent. And fair enough, there's lots of search volume for it, but they're not going to convert. They're not going to pay you for your services because they're looking for free solo, right? So we've got to make sure that the keywords we target have search volume and basically have the right intent. So we're going to touch on commercial intent in a moment here. But basically, commercial intent is the intent when someone comes to your website that they're looking to purchase. They're looking to kind of see the different contractors out there and make their decision. They're basically trying to vet one contractor against the other. That's why a lot of people get multiple quotes and all that kind of stuff. They shop around, right? It's that intent that we really want to focus on. Now, you can waste a lot of great content on the wrong keywords. If your pages, if your content is focused on the wrong keywords, it doesn't matter how great everything else is on your website. The right people aren't going to come to your website that are looking for your services. So I'm going to touch a bit now on revenue. So we've touched on kind of keywords. Each page should really focus on one primary keyword. And then we can kind of start seeing what pages bring in you revenue. So what pages bring in your website revenue? This is typically how I track my conversions for my clients. And you can kind of see here that we've got these blacked out lines here. This is two different clients, but the blacked out areas are what's called location pages. So I'll touch on them in just a moment here. But with this information, you can say that these pages are bringing in, for example, this page, if this was California, a location page targeting all of California, this page alone generated 17 leads this month, equaling about $42,000 in estimated revenue. Obviously, the estimated revenue would depend on the actual sales you closed, but an estimate is good for basically just showing the revenue against a page. We don't want to end with keywords because how do we know what's working, right? So this bottom screenshot here is a tool that I use called What Converts. It makes tracking really, really easy out of the box. It is a third-party tool that I do use, and this is a typical screenshot of what you see, right? So armed with this information, if you're just stopping at kind of what keywords your website is ranking for, you're missing out on probably the most important information. What pages, what keywords are generating you money, are generating you real qualified leads, right? So now we're going to touch on what content to create. So as I mentioned, there was 5 different buckets, right? We've got core pages, service pages, location pages, project pages, and blog content. So we're going to touch on these in much more detail, but basically you should create the content in this order. So don't skip to blog content or project pages if you don't have your core, your service pages in place and they're solid content, right? So the first one, core pages. Every single website should have these pages or some variation of these pages, but you want a homepage, you want an About Us page, testimonial, and contact. So these pages are really, really critical for generating trust as quickly as possible. A user comes to your website, if you've only got home, one service page, contact us, then they're not going to trust that you're capable, you're the best option to go with in their area, right? They're going to go to a much more established competitor in the area. So we can also include reviews, testimonials, brands, awards. So you should always be asking yourself, why should someone trust your brand over all the other competitors out there? If you can't answer that, you need to probably rework your content. You need to have a think of that. Why should someone trust us over all the other competitors out there? Because they've got a lot of options depending where you service, right? So the next up is service pages. I see a lot of contracting websites just have solar. Hey, we install solar, but they're missing out on a huge opportunity here. Google's going to see that one solar page and be like, all right, you guys install solar, but what does that really mean for the end user? Do you install residential solar, commercial solar? Do you do battery backups, off-grid systems? Do you do ground mount systems? All that kind of stuff. Do you do like the solar awning systems for car parks? So each of these services that are super distinct should have their own service page. And that's going to tell Google that this is directly what we're offering, and you should send targeted traffic to this page. It's going to perform much better in search because it's much more relevant. And then you'd also want to fill out your website with any filler services that you'd also like to rank for. So EV chargers, general electrician services, home automation, etc., etc. So EV chargers is probably the most common, or electrical services. One of these two. Most outfits, I would say, offer some variation of that. If you do, you need to have a service page for that to tell Google that we're still targeting this service. If you just talk about solar, Google's not going to know you do EV chargers or general electrical services. You can go more in depth in this. You can just be a level 3 EV chargers or commercial electrical services. But you really need to get hyper focused about the services you offer, and your content needs to reflect that. Otherwise, Google's not going to know exactly what you do. And when someone comes to your website, if they're not 100% sure that what they're after is something you do, they're going to go somewhere else. They're going to leave. They're going to go to the competitors. All right, location pages. This is one, I'd probably say the biggest opportunity for 90% of contractors out there, because some contractors are doing location pages, but they're doing them very badly. There's very few contractors out there actually creating solid location pages. So let me talk more about kind of what they are, right? So what locations do you service? Let's say, for an example, you service multiple states, but want to crush the California market very specifically. That's where your like a home shop's located, and you want to focus on California. So let's make example.com, and we're going to create a California page. This is going to target solar installations all over California. It's going to be broad. It's going to have a lot of searches, but it's going to be very, very competitive. So let's say that your shop was actually located in Fresno, for example. We're going to make a Fresno page. So this page is going to be a child page. What's called a child page. And it's going to be linked under the California page. So we've got example.com/California/Fresno. So this page is dedicated to all solar keywords in relation to Fresno. And then we can even go deeper into that and target specific neighborhoods. So this is where it gets really powerful, right? We've got California/Fresno/Clovis, just as an example, because this is a neighborhood in Fresno. The power behind this is Google knows exactly where people search from. They know their geolocation, right? So if they're more locationally relevant, then Google's going to show more relevant content higher in search. So if someone's searching for solar in Clovis, Google's going to know that you've got this page dedicated to solar installations in Clovis. And that's exactly how it works. It's just much more relevant and targeted content is going to push it up in search. So wanted to show you here a bit of a mindset shift, right? We always want to talk about the keywords that we want to rank for. So solar companies in California has 880 searches every single month. I'd say that's more than definitely more, like a couple of thousand at least. But it's a 54 out of 100 difficulty. So what that means is it's incredibly difficult. If you're just starting out, it's going to be pretty much impossible for you to break the first page of this search result. even 12 to 18 months, if you're a brand new contractor, probably isn't realistic. You're probably looking at 2 years plus, unless you've got a lot of budget you can push for this keyword. But solar companies in Fresno, 390 searches just for that one keyword. There's a lot of variations on this keyword, both these keywords, right? So 390 searches, 390 people are typing in solar companies in Fresno. And it's a difficulty of 29 out of 100. So it's much less competitive. So looking at this, you could start ranking for this keyword 3 to 6 months. Very conservative, but it's just something to be aware of, that the hyper-focused you go typically is going to be less and less competitive. So you don't need to win the biggest keywords out there to win with SEO. All you need to do is know exactly what you're targeting and get hyper-focused with your keywords, with your content. So project pages. This is another opportunity to rank in specific locations, but it needs to be done right. These pages help generate trust, and they rank for target locations because you're talking about projects in a very specific area. Each project should have a unique page. So that means if I click one of these images or the text here, it's going to take me to a new page where there's a little bit of information about that project. You know, how big is the system, like the physical size, the kilowatt size, all that kind of stuff. How many panels, like what inverter was used, all that kind of stuff, that information, right? And how much did it cost? What's a typical ROI? Maybe, depending on kind of how you price things. It might be a good idea to include that. So you want to add some basic information about each job. Were there any unique things or problems you had to overcome during the installation process? All that kind of stuff. Just to kind of, you know, if people had to get a tree cut down or something like that, you can talk about that because it was casting too much shade over a potential PV installation. That if someone has that issue, they kind of might see that and be like, oh, okay, fair enough. They can kind of like look at all angles, right? They're trustworthy. They know exactly what they're doing. So add a few images as well, like these guys have done here. Add a few images, video as well, if you've got it, really helps. So blog content is the fifth bucket. We want to use blog content to answer questions your customers have, past and present. So if you're on the phone in person with a customer and you kept getting asked the same questions, it's probably a good idea for a blog content, right? So like, how much does solar cost? What's the typical ROI in your specific location? What's the rebates? All that kind of stuff. Do I need to go off grid, on grid? All that kind of stuff. There's endless topics about blog content that's going to have several powerful factors for your website. You're going to grow what's called your website footprint. So that just means there's more content. So your website starts ranking for more keywords. There's more traffic in, and Google's going to start trusting your website because you've got what's called topical authority. You've got lots of content around the topic of solar in a specific location, right? And what topics about solar are helpful to a potential customer? So if you're trying to, sell a customer, it's going to be beneficial to educate them as much as you can, right? So you get on the call and they already know kind of like the basics, and they're just looking for like a detailed proposal, all that kind of stuff. You get a lot of those typical questions out of the way if you've got a lot of content, right? And someone really wants to kind of learn more about the solar industry. So blog content also really, really helps to promote pages. So this is through internal linking. So putting a link from one page to another page on your website. And for example, how much does this home solar system cost in Fresno? Can link back to the residential solar service page and the Fresno location page. So if you link to one of these or both of these, it's going to help them rank in search just a little bit better. Just a little bit better. If you do 5, 10 blog posts that point to the one page, that service page, that main page, is going to be much, much more competitive in search over time. All right. So finally, we're going to touch on how to how to create content that converts. And by converts, we're talking about basically get in touch with you to, buy your services. So going to touch on each of these points very slightly. There's a lot that kind of goes into this, but I had to trim down a lot of the converts information. Otherwise, we'd be here for days. So each page should focus on one main keyword. Don't try and cram, 20 or 30 keywords into one page. Don't even try and cram 10 keywords into one page, because it's going to come off unnatural. It's going to sound a little bit weird to someone that's reading it that doesn't know much about solar, right? So you want to focus on one main keyword. Google is going to pick up on what's called secondary keywords or related keywords to your one main keyword, but you want to focus one main keyword, so then you can map out your content strategy very easily, right? All pages should have unique content. Don't get lazy, copy and paste content from one page to a next. It won't work. I see this a lot with location pages. So they will make, like a contractor will make a solar in California page and a solar in Fresno page, for example. And they'll just copy and paste the exact content, change the location over, and post both, and they won't do well because they're exactly the same content. Each page needs to be unique, every single page, not just location pages. So write the content that answers your readers' questions before they have them. This is going to generate a huge amount of trust. What questions do they ask you on the phone, in person? And what FAQs can you answer in depth? So basically, they come to the website, they read your FAQs, and they don't ask you those questions on the phone. It just eliminates all that headache of repeating that question over and over and over. And one of the biggest questions I get asked, how many words does your solar content need to be? And there's no one answer to this. You want to look at the search results on Google to see what your competitors write about, see how long their articles are, and basically just aim for a little bit higher than that. So if your competitors for solar companies in Fresno, their location pages was 950 words on average, go for about 1,000. And you will typically be able to rank a little bit higher because it's much more in-depth content. Now, the caveat to that is it needs to be helpful content. You can't just write fluff and expect it to rank. It needs to be helpful content, and it really needs to focus on what users are asking, right? So it's much better to have a page that has a lower word count, that has no fluff in it, than a page that meets a typical word count and it's just filled with useless words. No one cares. We want to see relevant and helpful information only. Okay, so write for your people, not for Google. So read your content out loud. I know it sounds a bit weird, but ask yourself, does it sound right? By reading it out loud, you can see how it sounds. If it sounds off, then it's just going to read terrible for users, right? They're not going to really understand why, maybe, but they're just going to see, your main keyword just in there, like in the content, in the URL, everywhere. They're going to see this main keyword, and it's just going to sound off. It's going to sound robotic, and it's not going to generate trust, which is, we have to generate trust, right? So content for Google is often over-optimized. So that's keyword stuffing. That's that main keyword that's just all like littered throughout your article. We don't want to see that. We want to see natural content. We want to make sure that it reads great for a user. Always put your reader first, Google second. I'm going to repeat that just so it sinks in. Always always put your reader first, Google second. So answer questions, in your normal way of speaking is a great way to do this. And we want to make small paragraphs and more images. I'll touch on kind of how to break content up in just a moment, but you always just want to be putting your reader first. Don't put Google first, put your reader first, and it's going to help you rank better in Google. It's going to improve your conversion rate of your website as well. So this is another question that I touched on in the start of the training. Why should people trust you over the competition? You really need to get super clear on this question. What's the answer? So there's different ways to do this. You should employ, a few different ways to really generate trust. But yeah, you should try and showcase why people should trust you. So we do this by adding social proof throughout website and the content. So some typical ways you can differentiate yourself in your industry is how long have you been in business? How many projects have you completed? What do people say about you? What makes you different than the other contractors? But mainly, what are you superior on? What do you do that no one else can match? Customer service, quality installs. And you have to be a little bit deeper than just like, oh, we have the best customer service. We have the best quality installs. Because how do you make people believe that, you're basically telling the truth? You're being honest with your company, with your contracting service, right? So it's a tough question to ask because it is a very competitive industry, but you really want to showcase what you're superior on. Why should people trust you over the competition? And you can do that in several different ways throughout the content. I'll touch on why in just a moment, but we want to break content up. So no one's going to read this paragraph of words. It's just a wall of text. People are going to be hit with that, and they're going to leave. They're going to scroll. They're not going to read any of this because there's nothing that breaks it up. The paragraphs are too long. The sentences are too long. There's no engaging media. There's no subheadings. There's just a wall of black and white text, and it's boring. So shorten paragraphs, shorten your sentences, add media, images and video, include subheadings. So net metering here. Net metering for home solar could be a great what's called subheading in this content. And that just adds like more white space around. So the content's easy to digest for a reader. And better yet, add branded media. So your team, wraps trucks, all that kind of stuff. It's going to generate trust. It's going to keep people engaged with your content longer. And it's going to improve the amount of people that get in touch with you ultimately. So trust signals or social proof is another word for them. So we really want to be showcasing what others are saying about this, our partnerships, and all that, like, why should someone trust you? And content and your kind of design of your website helps a lot with this, but it can also hurt you if you don't have the right elements in place. So we can see reviews here. You got Yelp, Solar Tribune, Solar Reviews, Google. We've got more reviews over here. They're talking about warranty, and what are their partnerships? I know one of my clients loves displaying the Tesla partner badge because they get a lot of questions about it. It generates trust, right? So if you don't have these in some capacity on your website, I would 100% recommend implementing something like that. So to recap, content is basically the foundation of a website. If it's not done right, it's just not going to perform. It's not going to perform for you in search. There's a lot of bad content out there, and that's a great opportunity for you to take advantage of. So just to recap, we want to create content with a strategy and target the right keywords. We want to develop trust for your audience using social proof, and we want to focus on revenue. We want to track what pages, what keywords bring in revenue, not just keywords. Ranking first doesn't mean anything if you're not making money, right? So if you've got any questions, you can reach out to me. My name is Ben McLaughlin. I am a qualified electrician for over 12, 13 years now. You can find me on LinkedIn or my website, Easy Mode Media. And yeah, I'm more than happy to answer any questions you had about any of this training. Just, drop me a line and I'm more than happy to help. Awesome. Thank you for watching this training. Bye.